Bike companies are always adding new features to their bikes that make them better and more tempting for us consumers to rush out and buy them. Some of the features and trends are great and definitely make bikes better, but some are not so good and should probably die. So in this video, I've listed some of the trends that I hope change in 2024. Feel free to add yours by leaving a comment down below. One of the big trends with road bikes and increasingly gravel and mountain bikes are one-piece carbon fibre handlebars, which sure they look amazing and they're probably more aero in their wind tunnel, but they do present problems when it comes to optimizing a fit on the bike because you can't easily adjust the stem length, the handlebar width for a different one as you can with a conventional handlebar and stem arrangement. And then there's issues around fitting computers and lights and other accessories. Most bikes don't even come with a computer mount, you have to buy one separately, and when you're buying a high-end expensive road bike, that seems pretty crazy. Giant is a brand that does include a computer mount, but Canyon, for example, don't. So why can't they offer all the computer mounts and accessory mounts you need for fitting lights, phones and other gizmos to a one-piece handlebar if that's what they're forcing you to buy on that bike? And I do miss the old days of choosing a handlebar and stem setup that you actually wanted on your bike from a wide variety of brands like 3T, Pro, Ritchie, Easton and so on. But these days, increasingly the high-end bikes are coming with their own brand handlebar and stem, and because they're using their own system of internal routing, it's increasingly tricky to change that handlebar for a nail one. You are locked into that system, which is great if you don't mind that handlebar and stem and it fits you, but if you want anything outside of what they're offering you, then you are a bit stuck. Which leads me on to internal routing of brake hoses and gear cables if there are any cables on your bike. This has been a big trend in the road bike market for the last handful of years and is now happening in gravel and even on mountain bikes as well. And there are pros and cons to it as well. It looks cool, it looks sleek and possibly a bit more aero if you believe the claims, but there are many downsides as well. Least of which is the ability to easily service the headset bearings, which as a UK cyclist is something you have to do fairly frequently because we ride through some awful conditions. I mean, right now it's hammering down with rain outside, which is why I'm in my warm office staying out of the rain. And it is clear that internal routing is very popular with many cyclists and consumers because I see the comments on my reviews, but lots of people rightly don't like it. Now, my solution to the trend is to offer only internal routing on high-end bikes, those bikes designed for the pros and those pro riders who have a personal mechanic that washes their bike after every single ride and to maintain the bike when it needs a full service. But for us mere mortals who are expected to buy bikes and look after them ourselves, I would like to see more options for a non-internal routing system. Have a bike for the pros designed for performance and all the compromises that brings, but then a bike that dials back the performance but gives us some usability and easy servicing of that bike. And I think the popularity of one bike in particular, the Specialized Athos, shows how much a bike designed without internal routing can be popular with consumers. And if more bike brands copied that bike, we'd have more choice in that area of the top end market for a nice carbon fibre lightweight bike with regular handlebars and stem and regular external routing. But sadly, I think the boat might have sailed on that one for road bikes, but there is still a chance to save mountain bikes from the trend. It's happening on XC mountain bikes like that Cervelo I'm currently reviewing and that Canyon Lux I reviewed a few weeks ago. It's not too late to save their bikes from the internal routing nightmare that it can be for many, many people. Modern bikes are pretty complex these days, but it wasn't always this way. These days you have to charge a multiple number of batteries on your group set, your power meter and your computer and your lights before you can even leave the house. When did it get this complex? And there's nothing worse than a battery being flat before you start a ride or running out during a ride and you have to limp home in one gear, especially if there's a few hills between you and your house. Now, arguably electronic gears are fantastic and do bring improvements in some ways to a bike, but I do miss the old days of a mechanical group set that had no batteries and needed charging up, and you knew every time you picked that bike out of the rack, it'd be ready to go. Maybe pump the tyres up, but no batteries to worry about before the ride or during a ride. And not just a group set either, there's batteries in your power meter, in your lights, and your computer, your Garmin or Wahoo, that all need charging up as well. And it all makes riding a bike very complex these days. And it seems like the trend for electronic group sets is not going anywhere. In fact, it's the opposite, with Shimano, SRAM committing to electronic group sets going forward and dropping support for mechanical group sets. But I personally think this is a big mistake. Not everybody wants or needs an electronic group set. When mechanical works just fine, why can't they offer a mechanical group set alongside an electronic group set and have two options to keep everybody happy? Those who want electronic shifting can have it and all that complexity, and those who want an easy life but still want great shifting performance can have a mechanical group set and everybody is happy. Surely that is possible. I can't see why they don't offer both, whether at the high end, the mid-range or the entry level. And we are seeing electronic group sets become more affordable or cheaper and trickling down to mid-range bikes more than ever before. And it won't be long before even entry-level bikes have electronic group sets. Okay, maybe in the next 10 or 20 years, but the way Shimano and SRAM are going, that isn't beyond the realms of possibility. So bring back mechanical group sets for those of us who still want the simplicity of a bike that doesn't need charging up before you leave the house or gives you that fear of the battery running out during a ride. Other electronic devices you can take or leave, computers, power meters, they're all optional, but a group set is pretty fundamental to the way the bike works. Talking of group sets, it'd be fantastic to see more options in the group set market going forward. Shimano has such a stranglehold on the market and dominate the way the bikes evolve over the years, and while SRAM does a pretty good job of challenging the dominance of the Japanese company and Campag to a lesser extent, it would be great to see more group set options in the market. A market where you have 5, 6 or 7 groups to choose from would be good for competition, good for price and good for features as well. The big promise for lots of people is a Chinese group set revolution. But my first experience of a Chinese electronic group set, video link above in case you missed that, left me a bit disappointed. But to be fair, they had come a long way in a short amount of time, albeit by copying Shimano. But if they continue the rate of progress, it won't be too many years before we have some decent, credible rival group sets from the Chinese bike brands, offering not just the promise of lower prices, but also more innovation as well, and different features and trends that we haven't seen before. One thing that's always annoyed me about bikes is how you can't choose a colour when you buy a bike. If you go and buy a new car, you have a wide range of colours to choose from, as you'd hope when you're spending that sort of money on a new car. But given how expensive bikes are these days, why can't we have more choice of colour? Often you have a choice of one colour, sometimes if you're lucky 2, maybe sometimes 3, but no more than that. Why can't you customise and choose the colour of your bike, especially if you're spending anything north of £5,000, and some bikes are £12,000 now, but you still can't choose the colour you want on that bike. The other way to choose a colour is to choose a different level of bike with different parts and equipment on that bike, but there's no way to get the colour you actually want on your new high-end bike. And it really shouldn't be that difficult for bike manufacturers to offer some sort of colour choice when you're buying a bike, whether an expensive one or a mid-range one. And as a trend, I would definitely love to see change in 2024. Probably the worst trend right now, or for the last couple of years, has been the high prices for bikes and equipment. And hopefully that is a trend that changes in 2024. Now, as you all know, there are many factors that have led to the rise in the price of bikes. The same reason my mortgage has gone up, my food shopping bill has gone up, and why a new car costs £10,000 more than it did a few years ago. A Golf GTI, for example, is 10 grand more than it was in 2018. But hopefully we might see the end of the trend in 2024 and bikes start to come down in price and become a bit more realistic for those of us who don't have a spare 12k to drop on a shiny new bike. And part of the reason that high-end bikes are so expensive is all that wind tunnel testing, the aerodynamic pursuit of speed, all the electronic group sets and power meters, which are great if you're a pro and you're paid to ride bikes for a living and winning races is what you live to do. But for us mere mortals, there's definitely an opportunity for sensibly designed bikes that aren't optimized to be as aero as possible, don't have all the electronic gizmos and gadgets, and don't have all the internal routing. Just a sensible, well-designed, lightweight, smooth riding bike that has all the features you need and none you don't for a lower price point. I think again the Specialized Athos is a clear example of a bike that can be a really simply designed bike that does all the key things right and doesn't have all the features you don't actually need for that sort of person buying a bike and riding it the way they do, but at a lower price point. And one way to get a lower price bike is to change your frame material. We are also in love with carbon fiber, which is a fantastic material, but I still have a soft spot for aluminium. It's used on cheap entry-level bikes, but some bike brands like Specialized, Trek and Cannondale do use it on high-end bikes, but not as high-end as I like to see. And aluminium is great because it's lightweight, it's stiff, it's strong, and because it costs less to make that frame compared to carbon fiber, much less intensive, and you can automate the process much more easily, there's less cost tied up in the frame, so more money for components or to make the whole bike cheaper than a carbon equivalent. And my experience of riding an old CAD 12 this year, twice, has reminded me just how good the frame material is when done as well as it is on a CAD series of bikes. And with good wheels, carbon aero wheels and some nice parts and group sets, it rides just as well as anybody needs if you're just going out on a Sunday and blasting around for 50 miles and then back to the cafe afterwards. So hopefully we'll see a trend towards less carbon, high-end aerodynamic bikes in 2024 and more well-designed aluminium bikes at a lower price point next year. The last trend I hope to see change in 2024 is a total disregard for the environment. And I hope to see more brands take sustainability and the carbon footprint a lot more seriously. The planet is a fragile thing these days, and hopefully bike manufacturers from frame to tyre to wheel brands will do more to make their sustainability a bigger focus of their product development and their selling point to us consumers who are increasingly concerned about the environmental impact of the products they are buying, whether it's bikes, clothing, food, whatever it is. Take carbon fiber. It's a fantastic material, but notoriously difficult to recycle. I've been speaking to a few brands in recent weeks about some of the products and developments they have lined up for next year and beyond that sound really, really exciting. Using different materials and alternative materials that make carbon fiber a material you can now recycle and giving that material a second and even third life. And that's a really good thing to hear. And I think it'd be great to see more bike companies look at developing products that have a longer shelf life, a longer service life, not a bike built to be disposable, but a product you can keep for 10 or 20 years. Some frame materials have this USP, like titanium, of being a material for life. But what about a bike for life? A bike you can easily service, doesn't have parts that'll be out of date in a few years' time, like the seat post, the handlebar, the internal routing, the bottom bracket, and so on. Bikes built to last a long time and be easily serviced by any consumer at home with basic tools, and made from materials that have less impact on the Earth's precious resources. And I do have plans to do more video on sustainability and put a spotlight on brands that are doing really good things in this space next year, so watch out for that. Anyway, those are my trends that I hope die or change perhaps in 2024. I'll probably be totally wrong, but we'll see how the next 12 months go. Let me know what trends you love and hate by leaving a comment down below. And if you want to see a roundup of the best bikes I have reviewed in 2023, then watch this video up here. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel by hitting the button right here. But that's all for today, folks. I'll see you again very soon.